I've heard over 34,000. I see that's being reported right now as of a few hours ago on CNN. I've heard it's even higher than that. Do you see those buildings come down?
Oh, it was incredible how many videos we have just watching the demolition of these buildings. It was absolutely heartbreaking because people are inside.
Some of these were big, look like apartment or office complexes,
right?
And it was weird in a way how one would just completely crumble in the shaking, and then the building next door was still standing.
It really speaks to me about the construction. And I don't know what the standards are there, what the building practices are, but clearly some were built differently than others with higher quality materials, with more proficiency, whatever it might be. But I think Turkey is looking into this very thing about the building standards. You say 34,000?
Yeah.
That's the number that that's just absolutely incredible. I did see over the weekend that they found a mother and her newborn that had been buried for nearly 4 days. They just pulled out a 4-year-old recently, but largely this is a recovery effort than a rescue effort.
Here's some of that moment when survivors were being found underneath all that rubble. These people were buried for 145 hours, and they're now, thankfully, some are being found alive. But Amos Giora, professor of law at University of Utah, also an expert on the Middle East, the death toll is just staggering to me. I had no idea when this earthquake happened just a few days ago that we were going to hit this number. It's just sickening.
Good morning. Staggering seems to be a good word, with also the realization that you said 34,000. A, I don't think we really know, and B, it'll take a while until a final number is known in Turkey and or Syria. Devastating. And you also mentioned the quality of the buildings, which I think there's, if I understand correctly, there are cries or anger in Turkey with respect to quality of building, corruption, contractors, how it all works. But I want to add that, as you both know, I live in Israel, and there's an increasing recognition, realization in Israel, which is by all recognition, modern Western standards, that if we had a real earthquake, I'm not sure to what extent our buildings would all hold up, and to what extent even a place like Israel is ready for the kind of a devastating earthquake that happened in Turkey.
Yeah, I think, we had a little shaking here that did very little damage, and the only damage that happened here in Utah was those unreinforced masonry buildings built, prior to 1960. I can't say we were totally surprised of what was damaged here, but yeah, a large-scale earthquake, I don't think any of us can really comprehend how well our buildings would hold up. Can you tell us, what do you know? I think when it initially happened and we spoke to you, you were impressed with how willing the countries were to allow support, to bring in other countries. How has that relief effort transpired?
So politics, unfortunately, wins. Yesterday, the Israeli rescue team, which was in Turkey, had to very quickly, leave Turkey because of what I understand to be what were imminent security threats against the Israeli rescuers. To call it outrageous is to be polite, and they are, I think it's 11 o'clock in the morning here, so they probably have already landed back in Israel. And the fact that what the team that was there had to leave because of threats to them is just, again, call it outrageous, call it whatever you want to call it. As I understand it, European countries that were involved in rescue missions have either left or are now involved in recovery. Rescue and recovery are not one and the same. What's the Turks' capability of dealing with the massive fallout? probably unclear. And I think that with respect to Syria, that is pretty clear that the Syrian regime is not going to be capable of dealing with this, which is, I assume, the best politics is to lash out. Why the Syrians have lashed out at whoever they're lashing out, feeling whatever. I mean, it's just the politics. As I said last week, one would like to think that in the aftermath of an earthquake, humanitarian considerations would win out over political considerations. But I'm not sure that's going to hold out.
Well, it's not just, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. Amos Giora is a professor of law at the University of Utah, Middle East counterterrorism expert, also lives in Israel. Are you there now, Professor?
No, I'm in my office in Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay. It just breaks my heart to think of people, and hopefully they're still able to find some people alive. But I know as the hours tick by, I mean, that becomes less and less likely. When lives are in the balance like they are and the devastation is so widespread, it would be impossible for any community, one community, to deal with this on their own. You would need the help of other nations. You would, right? I mean, you would.
And we saw that the previous earthquake was in '99 when the same Israeli team went to Turkey and here and there you're able to pull people out of the rubble. There's no way that without international assistance, not only in the immediate, but I want to emphasize, this area of Turkey is going to have to be rebuilt. I mean, and that's not going to happen overnight. That's going to require significant funding. Back to Syria, I think it was the Syrians who are now angry at the UN, but when that I take to be simply lashing out for domestic consumption. But I absolutely agree with you that absent foreign aid, there's no way that either Turkey and or Syria can begin, underline the word begin the process of rebuilding. And let me rephrase that. They're miles away from rebuilding. First, you got to, do away, this sounds, to be blunt, there's an enormous amount of rubble
yes.
That needs to be cleared. I mean, it's unimaginable how much the cleanup is. I mean, this is overwhelming.
Amos Giora, thank you for joining us this morning. Professor of law at the University of Utah, but truly we tap into his expertise in the things that are happening in the Middle East.
Thanks, Professor. Dave, did you see this picture? I saw it on the internet the other day, and I just pulled it up again on another source. Look at the crack in the ground. They're saying that's massive. And they're saying it's like miles and miles long that was created by this earthquake.
I hadn't seen that picture, Deb.
You have to look at it because it's mind-boggling, let alone the video out of Turkey of all those buildings that just collapsed.
So this is the regular White House press briefing. So you'll have Karine Jean-Pierre, but you will also have John Kirby there, who will take questions about the objects that have been shot down over the last 3 days. So that will be coming as they get ready to roll there in Washington, D.C.
Kirby's
today.
with the National Security Council, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he is the Strategic Communications Coordinator for the council.
Can we dip into live coverage, guys? Okay. Oh, it hasn't started yet. We're standing by right now for ABC News to take us to live coverage of that. We want to cover that because this is the talk of every town, right? I mean, now we've got 3 objects over the last weekend that were blown out of the sky by U.S. fighter jets. And then you've got the one, in addition, about a week and a half ago, that was the Chinese spy balloon. What are your inside sources telling you, Boyd?
So really interesting. If you look at everything that took place over the weekend, the additional 3 things shot down, I think one of the most fascinating things is the fact that the White House has said nothing, like not a word. And so I think that is really interesting. Now, it's a tricky balance from a communication strategy standpoint because they still don't know what all of those things are, whether what was over Lake Michigan or what else has gone down. They haven't recovered those yet, so they're not quite sure.
Just moments ago, I saw it cross on CNN. You know how they put the graphics on the bottom. They said there was some sort of payload on 2 of those flying objects that were shot out of the sky. The White House will be taking questions any moment now. We do we have any other information yet on what that payload could mean or could be?
Yeah, no indications yet from anywhere, either from the Pentagon, State Department. Nobody's saying what that payload is. Again, the recovery effort started immediately. You had those that were over Alaska, landed on frozen ocean, so that's an interesting recovery operation. You've got those that were over Lake Michigan, also interesting this time of year. And so I think all of that is just going to be a very slow roll, and I think John Kirby is just going to try to at least answer a few questions. And I think what he's really trying to do is to buy President Biden some time so they can do a more thorough assessment before he speaks to the American people. I think he has to speak to the American people. Democrats and Republicans alike have been calling for him to say something, to give the citizens, to give our allies, and to give our enemies some clear indications about where we are and what he thinks comes next.
I think we were all pretty surprised that it didn't play a larger role in the State of the Union address. And then to see over this weekend 3 additional objects shot out of the sky. And again, we're still sitting here on Monday morning waiting for something to be revealed, what was found, what was recovered, because we have information. We've recovered, at minimum, the first balloon that was shot down in the ocean.
Yeah, and the first balloon we know for sure is Chinese. It had transmission capabilities, it had surveillance capabilities. These others we don't quite know, or we haven't been told yet who owns them, where they're from, what capabilities, these payloads that Debbie was alluding to. That's everything. Once you figure out what that payload has, then you can start figuring out what was the real objective of this mission.
Yeah, we don't know if it was something nefarious or if it was just some sort of a collection device on it or anything that really matters to our national security.
Yeah. And a lot of companies do a lot of things in terms of gathering data and air samples, and all of those kinds of things are out there. But I do think had it been a privately owned piece, I think those folks would have run and said, "It's mine.
Yeah,
it's mine. Don't shoot down the next one."
That was our weather balloon, please.
So let's just take a second here and reset what we know so far in terms of the downing of these objects in the sky. There was one on Friday. Boyd, you've walked us through that. That was in Alaskan airspace or over Alaska. It was an F-22 that shot that down. You said the remnants fell onto frozen ice.
Ocean, yeah.
Okay. Frozen ice is frozen. Frozen ocean. Thank you for that clarification.
Department of Redundancy Department. Yes.
I can be good at that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. On Saturday, we have an American fighter jet, once again, that has shot down an unidentified object that was flying over northern Canada. And through this agreement with the United States, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has the authority and the ability to call on fighter jets from the United States. And then this is not a repeat. Yesterday, another object was shot down by another fighter jet over the skies of Michigan in Lake Huron. Yeah. This is crazy. I mean, does anybody... Boy, do your inside sources tell you if these have been up there all along and we're just getting antsy about this stuff now?
I think they're...
Is this space junk, Boyd?
I don't think it's space junk. I really don't.
Too close to Earth for that, right?
Yeah, way too close for that. And I think what has happened, though, is I think that we have been on this trajectory of needing to figure out how to deal with this. I think we've had balloons over the skies, and I think the Chinese have been using that for a number of years. I think our ability strategically to identify it, to recognize what it is and then deal with it, I think that is the part that's just catching up. So I don't know that there's more than we've had in the past, but finally I think our technology and our capabilities have caught up to the fact that this is how we can identify these kind of things, slow-moving, low air space, somewhere between 20,000 and 60,000 feet. So it's sort of a different capability in terms of defense. And so I think we've been slow on the defense side to figure that all out.
One of the things that has stood out to me is the altitude of which these are being shot down, because initially it was that big, ginormous, 200 feet tall balloon that was shot down that was maybe 70,000 feet, 60,000, 70,000 feet. Yeah. Well, now we're starting to find stuff down in commercial airline areas.
Yeah, and I think that's why they move swiftly on these, because it clearly is a danger to U.S. citizens, to U.S. aircraft. If they're flying down there between 20 and 40,000 feet, that's a very different ball game. And I think that's why they acted swiftly on those.
Here's what ABC News' chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz out of Washington, D.C., Boyd, said about our capability now of I opened up the lens of some sort of, I guess, telescope to see more of these objects. But let's listen to what she's reporting.
If you're asking yourself why there are suddenly so many unidentified objects flying around, you are not alone. But after that giant Chinese spy balloon crossed over the U.S., the administration is taking no chances and has adjusted the radar to catch smaller objects that may enter North American airspace.
I guess that's all we needed to do was adjust the radar.
It's a little trick of that dial. Can you just see the guy in the room there, just like turn it to 11? He just cranks it up, and so very interesting. Again, in terms of what is the real capability, what needed to be adjusted, and is it just that we're saying, okay, we're not messing around with anything anymore, even if we think it's probably not nefarious, we just can't risk it anymore, and so now they're taking them out. So the other thing is the behind the scenes in terms of who's coordinating what with whom. So again, private industry, they've got stuff up there in the air. I am sure there's a massive amount of information flow going on of we got stuff here, 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 and here. Don't shoot it down, please. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and who starts talking about those conversations.
Anytime you take an F-22 that's firing an AIM-9 Sidewinder missile to pop a balloon, I mean, there's no way to say it's anything other than a dramatic show of force. Are we escalating it, or are we sending just the right message?
I think we have to send a very strong message. To me, there's nothing more important for us to send a message to both our allies and to our enemies that we're not going to mess around. When it comes to our sovereign airspace over our territory, there is no messing around. And so I do think that's a very important message. I think it's a message the president needs to shout to the world of, look, for our allies, we're going to take care of this stuff. And we're going to be with you as you deal with this stuff. And to our enemies, we're not messing around.
Yeah, well, we're a little late to the party on that one because, the president was late to be warned last week or a week and a half ago about that Chinese spy balloon. I think we reported last week that it was 3 days of floating around, and it entered the lower 48, and then he found out.
And there's still nothing on the president's schedule today, like zero on the schedule, which is very surprising.
I just got the 2-minute warning, so let's cut away for a couple of minutes here. We're going to come back and take you live to the White House. We expect an update on all these objects that the U.S. military has been blowing out of the sky over the weekend.